Welcome back to the FTN NFL Draft Team Preview Series. I'm your host, Mike Randle, Chief Content Officer here at FTN. Follow me on Twitter at Randle Randle. We continue our mission to give you the most insight possible here for the NFL Draft, which is just about 10 days away. And what we do here is we bring in an expert from the Pittsburgh Panthers. This is a huge guest for us, Jerry DiPaola. Follow him on Twitter at JDiPaola_Trib. He's going to give us insight to the Pittsburgh Panther players who can get drafted, which is great individual insight here for these athletes who are hoping to get their name called next Thursday. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much. I work for the Tribune Review newspaper. I've covered Pitt football since 2011. So I've seen the ups and downs.
You've seen the ups and downs. You're the perfect person to talk about the players here. So you were actually there on site during the pro day. From what I can gather, it's looking like 6 players or so that may get drafted, possibly 7. So why don't you take some time here, go through each one of those players, talks about the strengths that you've seen, maybe weaknesses, and where you think a landing spot could occur for each one of them if possible. So go ahead.
Well, the most interesting player, of course, is Calijah Kancey, defensive tackle out of Florida, who worked out at pro day and did real well. Didn't run the 40, but his 40 time at the combine back in February was 4.67. That was the best for any defensive tackle at the pro day. And Kancey's one of those what they call quick twitch guys, quick off the line of scrimmage with a lot of power. Not real big, but he was very proud of himself. One of the things he talked about when we interviewed him after the workouts were done, he was measured at 6'1", 283. 6'1" is exactly what Aaron Donald, his height, when he came out of Pitt. And there's been a lot of comparisons between Kancey and Donald just because they have kind of the same stature. They're not real big guys as far as weight. He's, like I said, he's only 283. And Donald was around that when he was drafted by the Rams first round in 2014. But Kancey has a good shot to be a first-round pick, I believe. There's been talk about him being in the top 10. There's been talk about him falling as far as maybe even 17, where the Steelers would pick. And if he would do that, it would be amazing. And Pitt would have 2 consecutive first-round picks in 2 consecutive years. And also both going to the Steelers, which, of course, they share the practice facility on Pittsburgh South Side. So Mike Tomlin and company have a good view of these guys and get to know these guys while they're at Pitt. But I'm not sure that the Steelers need defensive tackle help because Cam Hayward's getting up in years. But I think that you'll see Kancey maybe go before that. The other guy I think could get drafted real high as a running back, Israel Abanikanda. Goes by Izzy. One of the things they talked about at Pitt all year was Izzy to the hizzy, because he has a kind of a breakout speed that he's powerful. He's about 215 pounds. But, you know, the Tennessee game, for special, I remember the Tennessee game, specifically, we had a little slice through the line of scrimmage. He found a hole. Then a couple of defensive backs had an angle on him. He just outran them. And it takes me back to the days right before COVID in 2020 when he was a freshman. He was an early enrollee. And we had 3 spring practices that year before things were shut down because of COVID. And he got the ball one day, and he just ran right up the middle. And again, a couple DBs, had a nice angle on him, Pitt DBs, and he's outran them. So the guy combines speed and power, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him going in the 2nd or 3rd round. Other guys, there's several other guys that could get drafted. One is an interesting guy, Habakkuk Baldanado, a native of Rome, Italy. Didn't play football until he was about 15 or 16 in Rome, and it was kind of a rudimentary league in Rome, but he ended up going to high school in Florida. One of the academies down in Bradenton, Florida, and he learned the game. He ended up getting recruited by Pitt, and he had a pretty good career as a defensive end. Not a real big guy. He's tall, but he's only about 250, 255. But he has a chance. He had a good season, good 2 seasons at Pitt. Had some injury problems last year, so he may not get drafted early. The other guy, SirVocea Dennis, linebacker. Remember the 2021 Clemson game when Pitt played Clemson? It was called Heinz Field then. Now it's Acrisure Stadium. But he read one of those shovel passes that these quarterbacks like to try to sneak in, and he was right there at the 50-yard line to grab it and run 50 yards for a touchdown. Great instincts around the ball. Again, not a tremendous athlete, not a big guy as far as bulk, but he's always around the ball, and I think it'll get him drafted. A couple other guys, Brandon Hill, a safety. who had a really nice career at Pitt, probably could get drafted. And Pitt, has almost every year, I think it's 5 out of the last 6. They've had a defensive. It will be 5 out of the last 6 when Hill gets drafted. They had a defensive back taken in the NFL draft. Carter Warren, offensive tackle, had an injury-plagued season, but he's big. I think he has a chance to either get drafted or end up in somebody's camp as a free agent. And wide receiver Jared Wayne, big guy, 6'2", did real well at the workouts as far as jumping and running. No, not running. I'm sorry. He's not a real fast guy. He's a bigger guy, 6'2", 215, I think. So he'll have a chance to get drafted again. Not real high. I think the 2 highest guys drafted this year are going to be Abanikanda and Kancey. The other guys are going to get drafted somewhere in the second or third days, maybe the third days, maybe just end up in camp. One guy I mentioned too is a linebacker from the 2021 ACC championship team, John Petrishen, transfer from Penn State, local kid out of Pittsburgh with the Central Catholic High School. Worked out at the combine last year, did not get drafted, ended up going to a couple camps and not making it. But he came back this year for the 2022 pro day. And Pat Narduzzi even said, I really didn't want to bring a former player in because this is for the departing seniors. But the New York Giants actually asked for Petrishen to work out. And Narduzzi said, okay, you can come and work out and we'll see where it takes him. So, John's a good kid. And I hope he gets at least a shot to go to somebody's camp.
What's interesting, a couple players you talked about. Let's start with Kancey. The size issue has been discussed. Our own Jeff Ratcliffe has him mocked here going to Pittsburgh. Like you said, pick 17. I think it would be a great fit. I've heard things with Pittsburgh with Joey Porter Jr. also. Right. Obviously, the history with him, cornerback. I don't see that as much, but I think Kancey could end up there. I mean, solid player. Like you said, Mike Tomlin has seen him. You share the practice facility, and certainly super talented guy. I think he's a first-round talent here, Jerry.
He's definitely a first-round talent. But you hear a lot of different things. I've seen him in the top 6 once. I think whoever's picking 6 was supposedly supposed to take him. Somebody in the top 10, maybe. If he falls to 17, it'll be probably because of his height. You can't expect him to be Aaron Donald. I mean, he does have a quick twitch. He does have a lot of power. And he attracted a lot of double teams while he was at Pitt. But again, it's hard to predict the draft. You never know. But he was a great player at Pitt. He's also coached by an outstanding defensive line coach, Charlie Partridge, who really teaches these guys not so much they come in as great athletes. He really is a stickler for technique. And technique is very important when you're going up against double teams that end up totaling sometimes 625 pounds between 2 guys. So you have to get good technique to try to get by these guys. And that's what Kancey did. And he just blasted people several times during the season. And I think if teams look at his game film, they're going to agree with us that he's a first-round talent.
And Jerry, talk about Abanikanda a little bit because he fits the profile of the type of running back that comes into the NFL and can make a huge impact in the right situation. 4.5 speed, tremendous burst, 5'10", about 215, and really great performance. 1,400 rushing yards, 21 touchdowns. He even had some receptions for them. He's a type of player. I'm from New Jersey. We saw play like Isaiah Pacheco at Rutgers, maybe not the 4.35, 4.4 guy, but found a fit with the right team. He was super productive, and this is the type of player I think you have here at running back at Pittsburgh.
Interesting background with Abanikanda. Abraham Lincoln High School in Brooklyn. I think the Brooklyn and the Bronx and those areas of New York City aren't really known for producing a lot of great, talented college football players. But he came from there and he got to Pitt. He was raw maybe not as far as his talent goes, but as far as doing the little basics. And one thing college coaches and Pitt coaches, obviously included, really are sticklers for is pass protection. Izzy had a little problem with pass protection as a young player. Of course, he was there for the first year of COVID, and that didn't help him any. But once he got to his last season, in 2022 season, he was one of the top pass protecting running backs on the team. And, that's the kind of thing the NFL guys are going to be looking for. They just don't want a guy who can run the ball. They want a guy who can protect their quarterback because their quarterback, in a lot of cases, is making, as we see with Jalen Hurts just this morning, about $50 million a year. I really think that Izzy did his homework, worked on pass blocking, worked on pass catching too. He had one of the biggest receptions of the season, actually, in the West Virginia game in the opener, where Pitt came from behind. Izzy caught a pass, I think of a little foot pass, maybe by 10 yards from Keaton Slovis, broke a couple tackles, and went into the end zone to tie the score late in the fourth quarter. Pitt ended up winning that game on an interception return. Without Izzy getting that pass reception, he didn't have a lot of pass receptions, but he shows the ability to do that. So, like I said, with everything taken into account, his pass protecting, his pass catching, and the fact that he can run over people and run through and pass people, he's going to be a second or third round pick, I think.
And Izzy to the hizzy would be a great, of course, phrase to use here in the NFL. Jerry, thanks so much. Great information. Just one more question, then we'll get you out of here. Jordan Addison, of course, was with the Panthers for 2 years, then went to USC, was a mega producer, 100 catches, 17 touchdowns, almost 1,600 yards. Thoughts here on Jordan Addison, who is widely being considered as one of the top, if not the top wide receiver in this class going in round one. Your thoughts here? You saw Addison in person there in Pittsburgh 2 years ago. Great
route runner. He sort of went away from people. You look up and all of a sudden he was 10 yards behind any defensive back. He had a really great contested catch at Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium. And again, the Virginia game, they clinched the ACC Coastal Championship for Pitt, where he went up for a ball from Pickett on the sideline and fought off another defensive back, came down with the ball, turned and ran for a touchdown. And it clinched that victory. If Kenny Pickett was in charge of the Pittsburgh draft this year, I think Jordan Addison would be the pick. I don't think it's going to happen, though, because the Steelers' bigger needs, defensive line, offensive line, linebacker, wide receiver. They're going to draft a wide receiver, but they do have some picks in a high second round. That Chase Claypool trade with the Bears gives them, I think, the first pick in the second round. Maybe if Addison's there, they might. But as far as their first pick, I think somebody in the trenches.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerry, look, great insight here on Pittsburgh. Some major players, a lot of people who can make an impact next year in the NFL, folks. Jerry DiPaola at @JDiPaola_Trib covers Pittsburgh football. He is there. He gives you great insight, Jerry. We appreciate it. Make sure you follow him, folks. We'd love to have you back on here. We're getting ready. 10 days away. NFL draft. So exciting, Jerry. And definitely the Panthers are going to be well represented. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.